My friends, life is not built upon what we keep for ourselves, but upon what we are willing to release. There is a divine law woven into the very fabric of the universe. To receive, you must first give. This truth is as real as the sunrise, as certain as the tide. Think of the farmer. He cannot expect a harvest if he hoards his seed. Only when he casts it into the soil, trusting the unseen process, does the earth return to him a field overflowing with grain. And so it is with our lives. If we desire love, we must first give love. If we long for respect, we must first show respect. If we seek blessings, we must first become a blessing to others. Life itself operates on the timeless principle of sowing and reaping. From the beginning of creation, this law has been set into motion, unchanging and universal. Every farmer understands this truth. There can be no harvest without planting, no fruit without seed, and no reward without first making an investment. This principle, though drawn from the soil of the earth, reaches far beyond agriculture. It speaks to every area of our existence, our relationships, our character, our opportunities, and even our spiritual growth. If you want to receive, you must sow. If you want abundance, you must release. The farmer who clutches his seeds tightly, afraid to lose them, may keep them for a season, but in the end, he has nothing more than what he began with. Yet the one who takes those same seeds and casts them into the ground, trusting the process, will see fields filled with multiplied grain. This law teaches us that what we put into the world is what we draw back into our lives. If we plant seeds of kindness, generosity, and encouragement, we will find ourselves surrounded by kindness, generosity, and encouragement in return. But if we scatter seeds of bitterness, selfishness, or dishonesty, those too will grow and return to us. The soil of life does not discriminate. It simply brings forth whatever is planted within it. That is why it is so vital to be intentional about the seeds we are sowing each day. Every word we speak, every act we commit, every attitude we cultivate is a seed that has the power to yield a harvest. Too often people wait for blessings, hoping for success, love, or recognition, while failing to recognize that receiving requires a first step of giving. A student cannot reap the harvest of knowledge without sowing the seeds of study and discipline. A business person cannot reap the fruit of profit without sowing diligence, integrity, and hard work. A relationship cannot flourish into trust and intimacy without the seeds of patience, listening, and sacrifice. Life mirrors back to us what we are willing to invest. Just as the ground responds to the farmer, life responds to the giver. Now, the principle of sowing and reaping also carries within it the lesson of patience. A farmer does not plant a seed in the morning and expect a harvest by evening. He understands there is a process time, nurturing, waiting, and faith. In the same way, when we sow seeds of kindness or generosity, we may not see the return immediately. Sometimes weeks, months, or even years pass before the fruit of our giving appears. But this delay is not denial, it is preparation. The roots are spreading deep, unseen, until the day of harvest arrives. This teaches us to trust the unseen, to give without demanding instant results, and to believe that what we sow in sincerity will, in due time, come back to us. The measure of the harvest also depends on the measure of the sowing. A farmer who sows sparingly should not expect to reap a field overflowing with crops. But the one who scatters generously, trusting the abundance of the soil, finds that the return is multiplied beyond measure. The same is true for us. If we hold back in giving, whether it be our love, our effort, or our resources, the return will be limited. But if we give freely and generously, without fear, the harvest that returns will surpass what we could ever imagine. The law is simple yet profound. The more you sow, the more you will reap. This principle also reminds us that the quality of the seed matters. No farmer sows rotten or weak seed and expects a healthy harvest. In the same way, we must give our best if we hope to receive the best. If we sow half-hearted effort, careless words, or reluctant service, the return will mirror the seed. But when we sow excellence, integrity, and wholehearted devotion, the fruit that grows will be strong, lasting, and full of life. The harvest reflects the seed, and the seed reflects our heart. Finally, this law carries with it a profound truth about the nature of abundance. A seed that is sown does not simply return as one seed, it multiplies. A single grain planted in the soil produces a stalk with many kernels. A single act of kindness can inspire countless others. A single moment of generosity can create ripples that extend far beyond our vision. The harvest is always greater than the seed, and that is the miracle hidden in this law. What we give away does not leave us poorer. Instead, it becomes the doorway to something greater. Therefore, the principle of sowing and reaping teaches us not only about receiving, but also about how to live. It challenges us to see every choice as a seed, every action as an investment, and every day as an opportunity to plant wisely. We cannot control the seasons, we cannot control the weather, but we can control the seeds we place into the soil of life. And if we are faithful in our sowing, faithful in giving love, faithful in serving others, faithful in living with integrity, then the harvest we reap will be rich, abundant, and enduring. This is the unshakable law of life. To receive, we must first be willing to give, to sow with trust, and to believe in the promise of the harvest. Would you like me to expand all 6 keynotes, one by one, into 700 words, each like a full motivational series, or just a couple of them for a powerful, longer speech? Here's a 700-word expansion of the second keynote, Giving Expands the Heart. Written in an educational yet motivational flow, without any headings. The human heart was not created to be a container, but a channel. When we choose to give, something extraordinary begins to happen within us. The heart, which can easily shrink under the weight of selfishness and fear, begins to expand when we release what we have for the good of others. Giving enlarges our vision, softens our spirit, and opens us to experiences and blessings we would never encounter if we kept everything to ourselves. Just as a muscle grows stronger when exercised, so too does the heart grow richer and more alive when it is exercised in giving. When people hold tightly to what they have, whether it be money, time, energy, or love, they may feel a false sense of security, but in reality, their hearts become smaller and more rigid. The fear of loss becomes a prison that limits their capacity to enjoy life and connect deeply with others. But the moment they take even a small step toward generosity, that wall begins to break, and a flow of freedom takes its place. Giving teaches us that we are not diminished when we share. Instead, we are expanded. It creates a shift from scarcity to abundance, from fear to trust, and from isolation to connection. One of the most profound effects of giving is how it transforms our perspective. When we focus only on what we lack, life becomes narrow, and our problems appear overwhelming. But when we turn our attention to helping someone else, even in a small way, suddenly our world broadens. We begin to see that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, that our lives are connected to the lives of others in ways we may never fully understand. The act of giving moves us beyond self-centeredness and allows us to taste the deeper joy of living with purpose. Giving also nurtures empathy. When you give, you place yourself in another's story. You start to understand their struggles, their hopes, their dreams. You learn to see through their eyes, to feel with their heart. That connection is what expands the human soul. Empathy cannot be learned by reading a book or attending a lecture. It must be cultivated by entering into someone else's need and responding with kindness. Each time we give, we chip away at the hardness of indifference, and compassion takes root. The giver does not merely change the receiver's life. The giver is changed as well. Another truth about giving is that it awakens joy within us. The world often teaches that joy comes from gaining, from acquiring more possessions, more recognition, more success. But deep and lasting joy is not born from receiving. It is born from giving. Ask anyone who has devoted their life to service, and they will tell you that the greatest satisfaction they have ever known came not from what they kept, but from what they gave away. Science even confirms this truth, showing that acts of generosity release chemicals in the brain that create happiness. It is almost as if the very design of our bodies agrees with the eternal law that giving is what makes us whole. Giving also expands our capacity to trust. Many people cling tightly to what they have because they fear the unknown future. But when we give, we take a step of faith. We say, "I believe there will still be enough. I believe life will provide. I believe abundance is possible." This trust stretches us, enlarging our ability to walk in faith rather than fear. And as we give, we often find that doors open unexpectedly, opportunities arise, and provision comes from places we never imagined. The expanded heart learns to live not in anxiety, but in confidence that what we release will not be lost, but returned in some form, often multiplied. Perhaps the most beautiful part of giving is how it breaks the chains of selfishness. Left unchecked, the human heart can easily become consumed with its own desires. But selfishness is a prison that isolates us from true joy. Generosity is the key that unlocks the door. Every time we give, we resist the pull of greed and pride. We make a choice to live for something higher than ourselves. And in doing so, we become more human, more alive, more connected to the very essence of life. In the end, giving is not simply about transferring resources from one person to another. It is about transformation. It changes the giver as much as, and often more than, the receiver. It enlarges our hearts until they can hold more love, more peace, and more joy. A life that gives is a life that grows. A heart that gives is a heart that never stops expanding. This is the mystery and the miracle. The more you give, the more space you create within yourself to receive the fullness of life. Would you like me to now expand the third keynote, True Giving is Selfless, in the same 700-word style, so you'll have the first 3 fully built like a series? Here's a 700-word expansion of the third keynote. True Giving is Selfless, crafted in a motivational yet educational tone without any headings. True giving is not measured by the size of gift, but by the spirit in which it is given. A person may offer something large and impressive, yet if it is done for recognition, for applause, or for personal gain, the gift loses its power. The essence of true giving lies in selflessness. It is an act that expects nothing in return, an offering that flows from the heart with pure intention. Selfless giving is not about filling our own emptiness. It is about pouring out what we have to bring life, hope, and strength to others. The world often encourages us to give strategically, calculating what we might receive in exchange. We see this in business, politics, and even in personal relationships. Yet this is not giving, it is trading. To give with strings attached, to give only when it benefits us, is to miss the deeper purpose of generosity. Selfless giving requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to release without demand, to bless without condition. It is in that surrender that giving becomes sacred and powerful. One of the profound truths about selfless giving is that it reflects the purity of love. Love, at its highest form, does not seek its own advantage. It sacrifices, it serves, it lifts others without asking for repayment. When we give in love, without hidden motives, we mirror the very design of humanity itself. We were created not just to take, but to contribute, not just to survive, but to help others flourish. Such giving heals both the one who gives and the one who receives. There is also a remarkable freedom that comes from giving selflessly. When we give expecting something in return, we place ourselves in a position of disappointment. If the recognition does not come, if the gratitude is not expressed, we feel cheated. But when we give with no expectation, we release ourselves from this burden. We are free to give joyfully, knowing that the value of the act is complete in itself. This kind of giving cannot be tarnished by the response of others. Whether the gift is appreciated or overlooked, its worth remains because it was born of sincerity. Consider the story of the widow who gave her last 2 coins, not out of abundance, but out of sacrifice. Others gave larger sums, but their giving came from their surplus. Her offering, though small in measure, was great in meaning because it was given with a pure heart, expecting nothing in return. This illustrates the profound truth that selfless giving is not about the amount, it is about the heart. When the heart is sincere, even the smallest gift carries immeasurable weight. True giving also teaches humility. When we give selflessly, we acknowledge that life is not solely about us. We step away from pride and into compassion. We recognize that others' needs matter as much as, and sometimes more than, our own. Humility opens our eyes to see opportunities to give where we might otherwise overlook them. It teaches us that greatness is not found in how much we can accumulate, but in how much we are willing to share. Another aspect of selfless giving is that it often requires sacrifice. Giving what is easy, giving what costs us nothing, does not stretch the heart. But when we give of our time when we are busy, when we share our resources though we feel limited, when we extend forgiveness though it hurts, that is when giving becomes transformational. Sacrifice purifies the act, proving that it is not for self, but for love and for the higher good. And it is in these moments of sacrificial giving that we often find the deepest fulfillment. Selfless giving also multiplies beyond what we can see. A simple act, a word of encouragement, a gesture of kindness, a meal for someone in need, can spark a chain reaction. The receiver may in turn be inspired to give to someone else, and the cycle continues, spreading light in ways we cannot measure. Though the giver may never know the full impact, the ripple effects extend far beyond the original moment. That is the hidden beauty of giving with no agenda. It plants seeds that grow unseen, blessing generations to come. At its core, selfless giving is a reflection of character. It reveals who we are when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, when no one is keeping score. It shapes us into people who live not only for ourselves, but for the good of others. And in the end, it is this kind of life that is remembered, honored, and cherished. The wealth of possessions fades, but the legacy of generosity endures. So the call is simple yet profound. Give not to gain, but to bless. Give not for recognition, but for love. Give not because you must, but because you can. For when we give selflessly, we step into the highest expression of humanity, and in the mystery of life, we often find that though we expected nothing, we have received more than we ever. imagined, peace, joy, fulfillment, and the knowledge that our lives made a difference. Would you like me to now expand the fourth keynote, Receiving is Multiplication, into 700 words in the same flow, so you'll gradually have all 6 built as a complete motivational series? Here's a 700-word expansion of the fourth keynote, Receiving is Multiplication, written in an educational yet motivational flow without any headings. When we give, what comes back to us is rarely equal to what we released. It returns multiplied in ways both visible and invisible. Life has a way of magnifying generosity, of taking the smallest seed and producing a harvest that is far greater than what was sown. This is the mystery of receiving. It is never simply a one-for-one exchange. It is multiplication, an overflow that exceeds the measure of the gift. A kind word spoken to someone in despair may blossom into renewed hope that carries them through their darkest season. A moment of generosity may ignite a chain reaction that touches countless lives. What we release never returns to us in the same form. It comes back increased, transformed, and expanded. Consider the natural world. A single seed, when planted, does not return as a single seed. It grows into a tree that bears countless fruits, each carrying within it many more seeds. This is the law of multiplication. It reminds us that what we give is never lost. It is invested into the soil of life, where it grows in ways we cannot always predict. The smile you give a stranger may seem small, but it can be the spark that lifts their spirit, inspiring them to show kindness to another, and that kindness continues forward, multiplying beyond your sight. Too often, people misunderstand receiving as simple repayment, as if life owed them a precise return for their giving. But the truth is far greater. Receiving does not mirror the gift exactly, it amplifies it. When you give time to mentor a young person, you may not receive time in return, but you may gain gratitude, a bond, or the satisfaction of watching them succeed. When you give resources to help someone in need, it may not return as money, but perhaps as peace of mind, unexpected opportunities, or a deeper sense of joy. Multiplication means the return is richer, deeper, and often more surprising than what we imagined. This principle also teaches us that the quality of what we give matters. If we sow negativity, bitterness, or selfishness, those too will multiply. A harsh word can wound far beyond the moment it is spoken, creating pain that spreads through families, friendships, or communities. But if we give love, forgiveness, and encouragement, those too multiply, often healing wounds, restoring trust, and building bridges that endure. The harvest is always greater than the seed, whether for good or for harm. That is why we must choose carefully the seeds we release into the world. Receiving as multiplication also challenges our limited view of abundance. Many live with a scarcity mindset, believing that giving will leave them with less. They fear that sharing their time, energy, or resources will drain them. Yet the paradox is that giving creates increase. A teacher who shares knowledge does not lose understanding. Instead, their wisdom deepens. A leader who empowers others does not lose influence. They gain respect and loyalty. A person who gives love does not diminish their capacity to love. They expand it. In multiplication, the more you release, the more you discover you have. Patience is another lesson embedded in this principle. Multiplication does not happen instantly. A farmer who plants a seed does not see a tree the next day. There is waiting, nurturing, and trusting the unseen growth beneath the soil. In the same way, when we give, we may not see the multiplied return immediately. Sometimes it takes months, years, or even a lifetime before the fruit of generosity becomes visible. But the delay is part of the process. The multiplication is happening even when it is hidden. There is also a spiritual dimension to this truth. When we give with a pure heart, we align ourselves with the eternal law of abundance. What we release enters into a rhythm that transcends our own control, and the return often comes from unexpected sources. It may not come from the person we helped or from the place we expected, but it will come. The universe, in its design, honors generosity by multiplying it. Receiving, therefore, is not something we have to chase. It is the natural outflow of giving. One of the greatest joys of life is experiencing this multiplication not just for ourselves, but watching it ripple into the lives of others. A single act of generosity can shift a family's future, strengthen a community, or inspire movements of kindness that impact nations. Our giving, multiplied through time and people, often reaches far beyond our imagination. This is why even the smallest act should never be underestimated. What looks like little in your hand may become much in the hands of life. To live with this understanding is to live with faith and courage. It is to trust that nothing given in love is wasted. It is to believe that the return will come, and when it does, it will not merely replace what was given, but increase it many times over. Receiving is not subtraction, not addition, but multiplication. And those who give with open hands will find their lives overflowing with blessings, not because they demanded it, but because that is the unchanging law of life. What you release in kindness, love, and generosity returns to you multiplied, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Would you like me to continue expanding the fifth keynote? Giving is a universal law. In the same deep 700-word style, so your collection becomes even more complete. Here's a 700-word expansion of the fifth keynote. Giving is a universal law, written in an educational and motivational style without any headings, across every culture, every philosophy, and every faith. One truth is repeated with remarkable consistency. Giving is a universal law. It is not confined to one tradition or limited to one way of life. From the wisdom of ancient sages to the practices of modern societies, the call to give is present because it reflects a fundamental reality about the human experience. Giving is not an optional act of kindness. It is a law woven into the very fabric of existence. Just as gravity pulls objects to the ground, generosity pulls blessings back toward the giver. Life itself is built on this rhythm of exchange, of receiving and releasing, of breathing in and breathing out, of sowing and reaping. To resist this law is to live against the flow of life, but to embrace it is to align ourselves with the natural order of abundance. Think of the earth. The sun gives light without asking for payment, and in return, plants grow, animals thrive, and human life is sustained. Rivers give water as they flow, and their giving creates fertile land, food, and refreshment for all creatures. Trees give fruit, not for themselves, but for others to eat and enjoy. Everywhere in nature we see this law at work. Life gives, and because it gives, it continues to flourish. If nature were to withhold, if the sun refused to shine, or the river refused to flow, the cycle of life would collapse. The same is true for humanity. If we withhold, if we live only to keep for ourselves, we cut ourselves off from the abundance that giving releases. Every great civilization has taught this truth in its own way. Ancient texts speak of generosity as the highest virtue, declaring that those who give are honored not just by people, but by the unseen order of the universe. Philosophers have written that wealth is not in what a man possesses, but in what he shares. Faith traditions across the world encourage tithes, alms, offerings, or service, not to deplete people, but to enrich them by teaching the law of giving. Even in cultures far removed from one another, this principle arises again and again, as if humanity instinctively knows that life is fullest when it is shared. What makes giving a universal law is that it applies to every person, regardless of background, belief, or status. No one is exempt from it, and no one is too small to participate in it. A child sharing food with a friend, a neighbor lending a hand, a leader investing in their community. Each of these acts honors the same law. And the beauty of it is that the reward does not depend on wealth or position. It depends on willingness. Even those with little can give something: time, kindness, encouragement, or simply presence. And when they do, they enter into the same universal rhythm as those who give from abundance. This law also reminds us that giving is not always about material things. Words of affirmation, acts of service, patience, forgiveness, and love are all forms of giving. A smile given to someone in despair can be as valuable as money given to someone in need. A listening ear offered to a friend can heal more than a gift of gold. Giving is not measured by the material, but by the intention and impact. It is universal because every human being, regardless of means, has something to give. There is also a justice embedded in this law. When people live by it, communities thrive. Where generosity is practiced, poverty diminishes, relationships strengthen, and hope flourishes. But when selfishness prevails, societies decay. History shows us examples of both. Civilizations that embraced sharing and service often grew strong and united, while those that gave in to greed and exploitation collapsed under their own weight. The universal law of giving is not just personal, it is collective. Whole nations rise and fall by how well they honor it. Another remarkable truth is that giving aligns with the deepest needs of the human heart. Studies show that people who give are healthier, happier, and live longer. Their mental and emotional well-being improves because giving releases stress, builds connection, and awakens joy. This is not coincidence. It is the law at work. Just as gravity does not change based on who uses it, the law of giving does not change based on who practices it. It blesses all who honor it, regardless of belief, status, or background. To recognize giving as a universal law is to live with greater awareness. It calls us to see every opportunity to give as a chance to align with the rhythm of life. It challenges us to let go of the fear that we will be left with less and trust that life will always return more. It teaches us that selfishness is not only harmful to others, but it also robs us of the abundance we could receive. And it reminds us that we are all connected, that what we give to another, we in some way give to ourselves. At its heart, giving is a law that protects the flow of life. It ensures that blessings do not stagnate, but continue to circulate. When we hold too tightly, we dam the river and the flow stops. But when we give, the river runs freely, nourishing everything in its path, including us. This is why every culture, every faith, and every philosophy honors this truth. It is not a suggestion, it is a law. And those who live by it will find themselves in harmony with the very heartbeat of life itself. Would you like me to also expand the sixth keynote, "The joy of giving surpasses receiving," so you'll have the complete set of all 6 expanded keynote speeches? Here's a 700-word expansion of the 6th keynote, "The joy of giving surpasses receiving," written in a motivational and educational tone without any headings. There is a deep and abiding truth that the joy of giving surpasses the joy of receiving. While receiving brings comfort, gratitude, and often relief, giving carries with it a far greater reward, an inner fulfillment that cannot be measured by material standards. The moment you release something of yourself to bless another, whether it is time, love, encouragement, or resources, you tap into a joy that is richer and longer lasting than anything that comes from gain alone. Receiving satisfies for a moment, but giving transforms for a lifetime. When a child receives a gift, the happiness is evident in their eyes. But watch closely the face of the parent or loved one who gave that gift. Their joy is even greater. This illustrates a powerful reality. Joy is multiplied in giving. The act of seeing another uplifted, encouraged, or blessed because of what you offered brings a satisfaction that far outweighs personal gain. Receiving places the focus on oneself, but giving shifts the focus outward, and in that outward flow, the heart discovers a freedom and joy that self-centeredness can never provide. The reason giving produces such profound joy is because it aligns with the very design of humanity. We were not created only to consume, but to contribute. We were not made only to take, but to share. When we live only for ourselves, our lives feel shallow, empty, and restless. But when we give, we find meaning, purpose, and a sense of connection to something greater than ourselves. Giving awakens a joy that speaks to the deepest part of who we are. It is as if the human spirit was wired to come alive when it blesses another. There is also an enduring quality to the joy of giving. The happiness of receiving often fades quickly. A new possession loses its shine, a compliment is soon forgotten, and even success becomes yesterday's memory. But the joy of giving lingers. The memory of the person you helped, the knowledge that your effort made a difference, continues to inspire long after the moment has passed. Many people can recall, even decades later, the faces and stories of those they were able to help. That lasting fulfillment outlives the temporary thrill of receiving, proving that giving has a far deeper impact on the soul. Another reason giving surpasses receiving is because it strengthens relationships and builds community. When you give, you create bonds of trust and love. You demonstrate care, and in return, you foster connection. Receiving is passive. It comes to you, but giving is active. It requires choice, sacrifice, and intentionality. This investment in others lays a foundation for stronger ties, deeper friendships, and more resilient communities. The joy of knowing you have helped to uplift someone else creates a bond that no amount of personal gain could replace. Science itself confirms what wisdom has always taught. People who give experience greater happiness, less stress, and improved well-being. Studies show that acts of generosity trigger chemical responses in the brain, releasing endorphins that create what is often called a helper's high. This is no accident. It is evidence that we are built for giving. Our bodies, our minds, and our spirits thrive when we contribute to the well-being of others. The joy is not an illusion. It is the natural reward of living in harmony with the law of generosity. It is also worth noting that giving brings freedom. When we are obsessed with receiving, we become dependent on others to make us happy. We wait for recognition, for gifts, for opportunities, for rewards. But when we give, we take control of our joy. We no longer wait for life to hand us happiness. We create it by offering it to others. In giving, we discover that joy is not something to be chased, but something to be shared. And in sharing, we find we have more of it than we ever imagined. The joy of giving also transcends circumstances. Even in seasons of difficulty, those who give find strength and hope. A person may be struggling, yet by offering even the smallest act of kindness, they experience a lift in their spirit. This is because giving shifts the focus from our own struggles to the possibility of bringing light to someone else's darkness. It reminds us that no matter how difficult our journey, we still have something to offer, and that offering brings purpose and dignity. Ultimately, giving surpasses receiving because it connects us to eternity. What we receive will one day be gone. Possessions fade, applause fades, wealth fades, but what we give lives on in the lives of others. A gift of encouragement may echo in someone's heart for years. A sacrifice made to help another may change the course of their destiny. The legacy of giving outlasts the fleeting moment of receiving, and the joy it creates endures across time. To give is to live fully. To give is to experience joy at its highest level. While receiving will always bring moments of happiness, it will never compare to the transformation, the purpose, and the deep satisfaction that comes from giving. The joy of giving does not just surpass receiving. It defines the very essence of a meaningful life.